Let's talk about the NHS with a sickening inevitability. Of course, the junior doctors today announced a 5 day strike, funnily enough, just before the election, June the 27th, for 5 days. So don't forget, when you see them all on strike, don't forget to go to the ballot box going, oh, look, the doctors are on strike, I must vote Labour. That is an outrageous thing to do. It's so blatantly political, and patients will die because of it. I hope those junior doctors can sleep well at night because they shouldn't be able to. Outrageous. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer and his gang have pledged to cut NHS waiting lists in half. Peel away the surface statement, it's not that great. They say it'll take 5 years to do that. And then their target is to start treatment within 18 weeks after that. It's not exactly great, is it? Let's talk to former NHS Trust Chairman Martin Gower. Thank you for joining us, Martin.
Nice to talk to you, Kevin.
Let's
I'm,
talk.
I'm sure.
Let's talk about the doctors first. I mean, this is a
Yeah,
blatantly political strike just before the election on July the 4th, June the 27th. They're going to go out for 5 days. And what I always say about these strikes, we all know because of them, patients die. And if these junior doctors think this is a decent thing to do, to sacrifice patients' lives on the altar of industrial action planned to influence the general election, I think they should all go straight to hell.
I'm sure Sir Keir and Mr. Streeting will come out and publicly state that they shouldn't go ahead with this strike and how wrong it is, how clearly politically motivated it is, and they should put it back. I'm sure they'll give that support. Well, I don't know that I am sure actually, but they certainly should do.
Yeah, I mean they should, but
They
these
really should.
these are their friends, and as I say, yeah, you and I have condemned these junior doctor strikes before because no ifs, no buts. They cost lives. If you haven't got doctors in hospitals, I'm afraid patients suffer. That's obvious. That's a normal strike. This strike, I mean, all of their strikes, frankly, have been pretty political against evil Tory governments and all that. But this one. It's just shameless. It's absolutely disgraceful. I'll just ask our audience, what do you think? As I say, I think these junior doctors for this strike should go straight to hell. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Let's park this before I get too furious. Let's talk about these waiting lists. I mean, it's all very well for them to say they're going to cut them in half. Doesn't look that impressive when you scrape away the surface. They say within 5 years. But I guess if they can do that, good news. How are they planning to do this, Martin, as far as you can work out?
Well, I think they don't quite recognize that it is a bit of a leaky bucket because you can, as hard as you try and take people off the waiting list, there are more who come onto the waiting list. And we are suffering still in this country from the closure and delay of services during the lockdowns and the COVID period. And so we're getting people who are very sick coming to hospitals, coming to their doctors, being referred. And yeah, the waiting list is long. Of course, it also includes people at the other end of that scale, perhaps people who are having cataract operations, which, although they are very challenging to those who have to have cataracts, of course, are not quite so major as some of the work being done in the hospitals. What I find puzzling, and I've tried to give this a good chance. I just don't think they're going to do it on the kind of money they're talking about.
Yeah.
When Blair and his government did cut the waiting lists, in real terms they increased the NHS spend by about 7%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 1.3 million is probably more going to be more like 8 billion to achieve this.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the slowness, that the absolute pain of getting the NHS to change its ways. Um, the process, as they call it, um, takes a long, long time, and I think that they're being rather optimistic that they can get the goodwill of the NHS and their managers and their doctors to support what they want to do. What they're saying is they're going to have 40,000 more appointment scans and operations each week. Um, by basically making people work at weekends and to double the number of scanners. So they're reckoning they can up the diagnostic rates, which of course will also speed up the number of people who come onto the waiting list.
Mm,
I mean, let's not forget, Kevin, that something like type 2 diabetes, there might be as many people who have type 2 diabetes who have not yet been diagnosed as there are who have been diagnosed.
yeah,
And the more testing we do, the more prostate tests, which are being actively promoted and encouraged. I mean, it's a good right to do them, don't get me wrong, but it isn't going to ease the waiting list.
nice.
And I think they're overestimating what they can achieve, even in 5 years. I know how effective NHS management is at diluting things,
Mm.
at doing a bit of what they're being asked for, and finding lots of reasons, staff shortages, etc., to stop them from doing it.
Yeah. Now, I don't decry Labour's ambition here. I mean, cutting
No, no.
NHS waiting lists is crucial. It's got to be done. But I think it's sort of typical of Labour's pledges. They basically go around saying, "Oh, the Tories have screwed this up. They've screwed that up. They've screwed up the boat crisis, so on and so forth. What we're going to do is we're going to do it better." And they never really
Well,
quite explain why. And can I just refer you to, as I say, good luck to Labour. I hope this works out. I can't see it happening because in reality, the NHS is like a juggernaut. It's impossible to change course with it. But it just seems to me that even at the end of this 5 years, the ambition is so you get treatment in 18 weeks. That's not really much of an ambition, is it? What you'd really like is if you're sick, you get treatment from your National Health Service. Not, oh, you're really sick. In 18 weeks, we might be able to see you. It's not exactly a stunning ambition in itself, is it?
no, it's not. Now, of course, the more serious conditions, people will be treated faster than that. They won't have to wait for 18 weeks, for example, if they've got
Of course, yeah.
you
Emergency stuff,
high
yeah.
stage or high grade cancer. But I think the problem we've got, and this is, I think, throughout the public sector at the moment, is the lack of their ability to concentrate on their core mission. They seem to get diverted into all sorts of other stuff that are not necessarily actually contributing to these sorts of things. And I think Wes Streeting, in fairness to him, did specifically talk about culture earlier this week. And unless the culture changes, you're not going to achieve any of these things. And that changing the culture of a long-standing organization. I mean, I heard it when I was in the NHS from middle managers who I met in conferences and things, because the sort of story, well, we see chairmen and chief executives and board members, they come and go, but things carry on.
Yeah.
Um, it's like in the middle of it all, there's a kind of passively resistant uh,
They
effort.
just carry on in the way that they've always
Absolutely.
carried on. And West Streeting, he's talking a good game. And again, I don't wish him ill in any way.
No,
I hope he succeeds. But I'll tell you what, you must have seen this many times. I've seen the difference between health secretaries who come into the job saying, "I'm going to reform the NHS. I'm going to make it much more efficient." You talk to that same person, that same health secretary, 1 year later, and they are broken. They are broken. And that's what I fear is going to happen to West Streeting. Good luck to him, but he's got a mountain to climb, hasn't he?
he has. I mean, Kevin, there's been 38 of them since the NHS was formed.
There you go.
I do actually have a slide at home because I go around giving some talks about the NHS that shows about half of them. And you look at and you try and think what their achievements were. And one or two did have some achievements, but it's the minority. At the end of the day, the idea that your health service can be kind of run
Mm.
by a politician any more than Rachel Reeves. She says because she worked at the Bank of England, she can run the economy.
Yeah,
She's not going to run the economy.
yeah.
And she's talking arrant nonsense, and people mustn't believe it. It's just not. it's not reality.
Well, that's politicians for you. It's like Jeremy Hunt. You know, I've been health secretary for 7 years, 7 disastrous years. Now I'm off to run the economy as Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's like politicians regard themselves, if they were a football team, they could play in goal, they could be the striker, they could be the winger, they can do everything. The trouble is, most of them can do the square root of sod all. That's the problem. Martin, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time, as always. Martin Gower there, former NHS Trust Chairman.